This week's podcast is all about catching. I'm sure lots of you out there want to go into your paddock or yard and catch a happy horse. What do you do when your horse obviously isn't happy about being caught? Well, stay tuned because Mark's going to offer some suggestions about how we can improve the catching process and how our horse feels about it. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
The first question, Mark, today is from Andrea from New Zealand. She's got a horse that didn't want to be touched in any way, but now is happy to hang out with her. And she's progressed so that she can finally halter him easily. And then once she's got the halter and the lead on him, she can tack him up. But what she's finding is that at liberty, he can be quite nasty about it. What she's finding is that at liberty, he can be quite nasty about being caught. Have you got any tips for her?
Well, it's an interesting, what you just said about that. I found that an interesting question because quite a few times at clinics, I take a halter off a horse and I talk about the emotional hobble. Sometimes some people have trouble walking up to their horse in the paddock because it kind of runs off. But then when they've got the horse in the arena, they can do this, well, what they think is amazing liberty. I look at different indicators in the quality of liberty. But because the horse is trotting the circle around them and running with them and stopping with them and backing up with them, then they think the horse is doing amazing. But then, a week out in the pasture, they go out in the paddock and they go to get the horse and it kind of wanders off with the others and not interested in them. So the liberty was only an obedience, and the emotional hobble was when that horse is in the arena and they make the connection with the person. Once that connection's, and I'm not saying all connections are good, connection's good, but there's negative connections that we have where horses feel once they're connected, they have to do that, or else there's going to be negative pressure applied to them, so they stay connected. But when that, over a week of disconnection, when the horse is with the herd, the horse doesn't want to reconnect because they know it's a negative feeling, though the horse is doing it at liberty. So it's just something to think about. I see that a lot in horses. And if they can avoid the connection and catch, means they can avoid that feeling of having to be connected with their owner at liberty or with the rope on. Sometimes the emotional hobble is when the halter goes on the horse. So the horse suddenly becomes nice and obedient and doesn't do seemingly anything wrong. Take the halter off and the horse wanders off, or it gets a bit angry when we put, like in your case, we bring a saddle blanket or something and go to saddle it, it gets a bit angry. Well, there's a reason for that. It's the horse feels with the halter off, it's a bit freer to express itself. With the halter on, it probably feels a bit emotionally hobbled, maybe still a little bit nervous in the halter, and there's a certain nervousness in the horse that's creating a caution. That's actually, when you're a bit more kind of confident, you can tell someone how you feel, but then when you're a bit more nervous, you just be quiet and do what you think you have to do. So maybe that halter and something in the leading is causing that horse to be a little bit more nervous and cautious, and too much so to express itself. So that's why when that halter comes off, it's a bit more confident to express itself and say, no, don't like it. Okay. How I would address this problem is I would probably have it in a small yard where it's not going to run off down the paddock. And if you're saddling at liberty, I would actually, if it gets angry when you bring that saddle blanket up to it, I would actually just get it to move off the saddle blanket. Any horses that I've come across, angry at girth, angry at this, angry at that, usually feel that they have to stand still. So all the communication goes through expression, but they don't move. So, but once a horse can move, if it doesn't like something, then it goes, well, I did something about it. I didn't have to just stand there and put up with it and go, I don't like it. So, and that's why in a halter, when I'm saddling horses, I actually move them into the saddle blanket or away from the saddle blanket, things like that. So when I'm leading a horse, I'm leading them into the saddle blanket and making sure I see any signs of tension. And if they're moving, generally when you put a saddle blanket on them, they'll move away a little bit, go, oh, and then I let them move away a bit. Then I bring them back in and let them touch the saddle blanket. And I try and do the whole process with them on the move until they're very, very soft when they're moving and I'm touching them with the saddle blanket. And if I've got a little light saddle, I can just rock them a bit and show them the saddle and take it off. And then by the time they stand, they're feeling very comfortable with it. And at liberty, it's the same thing. Like you might just start to approach your horse at liberty and allow it to move, not just make it feel like it has to stand still. And I think that'll really, help your horse do something about that expression until it doesn't feel that it's sort of backed into a corner. And I think maybe the feeling of having to stand still is what's causing the horse to feel not so good.
That's really interesting. So when she is now saddling it, and you're saying that she should get her horse to move if she sees that sort of tension rise. Does she need a halter and a lead rope on to do that? And if she does do that, then she has to look really closely, presumably, to see, because when it's at liberty, it's quite like clear.
What I would look for is when the holder's on. So obviously you're seeing the very clear expressions of I don't like it, but you might be seeing the expression of a bit of obedient helplessness when the holder's on. So you might just see a soft but sort of kind of gazy eye that's a bit nervous. Not a soft eye, I guess. Wrong word. Passive eye. It's not an angry eye. It's not a holy cow, I'm going to run away eye, but it's just one of those eyes that just goes still and goes, oh, I don't know what to do eye. So it's kind of passive and obedient, but the horse tightens up a little bit. What's very hard for the tension in the horse when you saddle it in the halter, there's probably little signs of anxiety in there that the horse is holding in. When the halter comes off, more brave to express itself, so it looks bigger. The expression looks bigger. It's more a defensive expression, whereas the other one's more of a passive, I'm hiding in a corner expression while you put the saddle on. So I would look for the small expressions of nervousness when the holder's on and offer the horse a solution that's better than just standing there putting up with it, which, you might go in, see a sign of anxiety. And when you see that little tiny sign of anxiety, you might just take up on your halter lead rope and just back your horse off and forward and backwards until it softens in the lead rope. But the saddle blanket hasn't got any closer to it. You've just kept it at that point of anxiety. And you haven't just kept bringing it in and doing it. And then when the horse releases the tension, looks a bit soft, maybe has a bit of a lick and two or whatever, because it's released a bit of tension, and then you might just stand it there and just take the saddle blanket away again and do that in graded exposure, but give the horse a bit of an alternative, which is always better through movement. And as I said, some horses I actually bring a saddle blanket up towards them and they go, what's that? And they back off a little bit and they go, oh, I can move away from that if I want. And then some horses will maybe move away from the saddle blanket as you're trying to do it, but then you can guide them again and get them soft. So, and until you can put the saddle blanket on, but by moving away a little bit, it means they're not bottling up, ready to get aggressive if they have a chance.
Because this is a horse that she hasn't been able to touch before until recently. So it sort of may feel like going backwards again for you, Andrea. But if you can get this right, if you can nail it, you're not going to have sort of problems in the future when you are riding the horse. So go back to getting all the little things that you've done, every little thing, but try and do that with the horse moving. And there are videos online about this, aren't there, Mark, about sort of getting your horse to move past you, with your hand on the hip, things like that. I would be looking at those just in case there's an issue there as well, so that you don't have this horse that's standing still. You want to be doing all these basic things with your horse moving, and just try that one, because you might find you overcome these issues and help it to feel good, as Mark says. And talking about horses that can get a little bit aggressive, the next one is about a horse that is hard to catch and is now starting to bite. It's from Dalet from Australia. She's been to a couple of your clinics, Mark. You've helped her with the catching sessions because she was having problems catching him. He got better, but now he's starting to threaten to bite as she's approaching him. So this is happening about 3 or 4 meters away. She's discovered that what she calls a side eye. She thinks that makes sense to you. And it seems to be a bit of a bite behaviour, which can also turn into his, he'll turn his rump towards her if she keeps approaching. So the bite threat is only ever when she's had a halter and a lead in her hand. But she has noticed that in the previous scenarios it has come through. So she's found it a little bit unnerving. So she's sort of resorted to doing some other things. I know you showed her, how to distract him as soon as there was any anxiety with the flag. And she did find that did help for a little bit. But this biting and the threatening behaviour is sort of new. And what she'd like to know is how she can get close enough to him with the halter and the lead rope safely. And she's a bit concerned that using the flag might just cause a bit more of the increased elevation of aggression. She doesn't want to get kicked. So she has, he's in the paddock at the moment where she walks through that paddock quite frequently during the day. So she's sort of trying to do a few more passive things. She's tried to go in doing jobs with her halter in her hand, but not actually doing anything with him. She's sat on the mounting block with the halter. She's walked towards him with no intention of catching him. She's tried different walking speeds. She's letting him have a sniff at the horse. She's had other people walking around with halters. And she's just noticed that when he's been isolated from his companion pony for longer than overnight, because he does get separated for feeding, he can be a little bit worse. So, she's sort of given a good picture there of what's happening, but she just would like to know if you've got any tips about how she can get that little bit closer to him safely.
Yeah, why is he doing it? That's the thing. Why is he doing it? He's a sort of horse, and because I sort of know him, he's a sort of horse that carries quite a bit of anxiety about a lot of things. Leaving his mates, he's got rain anxiety, stuff like that. And Darla, you've been doing a good job of sort of sifting through those things and trying to help him. But at the end of the day, there's a compilation of troubles in his mind that happen, whether it be under saddle, in the halter, leading, things like that. Catching is something that you don't fix catching if we don't fix leading and riding. There's some horses that I refuse to do catching lessons with the owners because I say, your horse is telling you that you're not leading it properly or not steering it properly or something like that. Learn how to lead it and steer it. And they say, well, I've got to catch it first. Well, I understand I've got to catch it first, but the problem always lies, sometimes I think it's in the catching because the horse runs off, and I need to fix that. I need to fix catching. But we don't put a lot of emphasis on catching if not enough emphasis put on the feeling good about being guided part of it. Otherwise, it's just like Hansel and Gretel. You've got a lolly house that suddenly changes once you're in it, and that's what happens to a lot of horses. And as I say, I'm not saying you don't lead your horse properly or steer it properly. It's probably a bit of a hard way of saying it because I know how much work you've put into a horse that was already troubled by what it was taught before you got it, and I know kind of what it's been through and the troubles you've been having with him. And I know it's going to be an ongoing thing to try and help him lead better, guide better under saddle, all that sort of stuff. There's areas there that need to have more work. That's probably causing the anticipation of, the halter means something else. So really have a look back into those things, and if there's anything you can think of that he's having trouble with in his leading, in his riding, that he's still kind of carrying a bit of brace or stuff, then basically, you're going to be working on that to help him be caught. The other thing, when I have horses that have become defensive, like I had one, a defensive man. This is probably I'm going to try and explain the catch to you a little bit. I had a defensive mare once, and she came at me defensive, but she was a bit shut down, and she was kind of worked in a way that a mindset I wasn't happy with, and I knew that mindset had to change. But in the catching, I had to catch her without approach and retreat, because you would have to do approach and retreat, and if you approached her without listening to her, she would get very defensive and kind of almost like come at you, like protect her friends and come at you sort of thing. So basically I would walk up and I would miss that first stage of anxiety and press a little further until she got defensive. And then as I pressed a little further and she started to come up and step up, I'd do something big that'd just shock her out of it. And then I'd just walk off and do something else. And then I'd come up again and she'd step up and I'd sort of do something big to distract her. So she'd say, that's not available. And then I'd walk away and leave her alone until she all of a sudden softened. Oh, that's right. And the other thing she wanted to do, because she's done a bit of hooking on or joining up stuff, she wanted to come up to me. And if I didn't let her do that, then she'd even get more aggressive about it. So, and I wouldn't let her come up to me either, because I'm like, don't hook on to me and come up to me because you think if you don't, I'm going to chase you. That's not going to happen. Just don't come at me with aggression and I'll walk to you. That's all I want to do. And yeah, so part of it was by not allowing her to come to me made her aggressive as well, because she said, I can't fix you not chasing me if I can't come to you. So she was really concerned and confused about that. And that's not necessarily your horse's case, but what I'm saying is walk to him till you see that when he builds up and goes, oh, and then see if you can snap him out of it and he's going to kind of go, what was that? And then by the time he's thought about it, you're off somewhere else doing something else, and you just repeat that transition until he sort of blinks and thinks when you come a little closer, and when he softens and you see a sign of softness in him as you're walking close to his bubble, then that's when you go back to approach and retreat. You see a sign of softness in him, and then you go, good boy, I'm just going to wander over here. And then you just walk up to him gently and put a hand on him. And you know, you can have the holder in your hand the whole time you're doing this, so he's associating that holder. When you get the holder on him, put it around his neck, lead him 3 steps, walk away, fix the round yard fence or whatever, come back again, do it again, and just keep repeating that over and over and over. But you need to step up to his hard defensiveness and say, that's probably not a good idea, let go of it, but then you're not going to bully him for it and say, I'm the boss now. You just leave him think about it and process it until when you walk up, he has that soft thought, okay? And then just try that, see how you go. But there's so many other things too. Check him for other problems. You know, I would say, you know, check for ulcers, check for stuff like that. There could be something underlying that's suddenly made him worse and it's out of the blue. So please check for other things. That's also important. Could be soreness when you ride him. Could be anything that he's telling you. I know what's going to happen when you catch me. I'm going to get ridden and I'm really sore back here or you know, whatever. So there could be another underlying, whether that be educational, physical. So look into that as well. But for everybody out there listening, I reinforce this. Don't do catching lessons on a horse that's troubled about how we train it. We have to fix the training, and the catching usually fixes itself.
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting. So for Dalit, a little bit more listening, maybe look into a few other areas, physical areas, as Mark said. Chiropractor can come in and check his back for soreness, and you can get the ulcer scopes done. Might well be worth it, because you just never know, because he has got a long history, hasn't he? So yeah, good point, Mark. That's some great tips in that, and your previous answer as well. So I hope that is helpful to anyone out there who's just wanting to improve or work on their catching techniques. We'll be back next week with some more horse training questions. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it, share it, or send us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. And if making a change in your horse appeals to you, Mark offers his direct support and a diverse learning platform. Head to marklangley.com.au and grab your 7-day free trial.